the sun. We had a little bit of wind. It was quite cool earlier. The potential for cats to be moving. Michael asks if there are any invasive waterfowl in South Africa, and I'm trying to think. Egyptian geese are localized across the continent. They have moved into areas that they didn't occur before, I'm thinking, and they are quite an aggressive species, but we do find them everywhere these days. I don't know if they're invasive because they are indigenous to the African continent, but I think because of the dams and because of the processes man has created through the damming, there's more dams in South Africa than any other continent, any other country in Africa. So I think with the facilitation of these water points, we've now got a lot more of those type of species. I know the mallard duck, I think that is an invasive species. I don't know if we get many of them in the savanna biome. In the savanna, it's very difficult for certain species to move in. Invasive species moving into an ecosystem that is quite solid and quite dynamic. There's lots of predators, there's lots of prey species. It is difficult for a species to move in when the competition is so high. In an area where there's not so much competition, it's a little bit easier for an invasive to move in. But when it comes to the Kruger Park and the greater Kruger, it's quite difficult for species to move in purely because of the predator-prey populations. Those animals don't do very, very well. You can hear the guinea fowl calling in the distance, that very we are going to be carrying on from here, exploring Chitwa for the first time, see if Senzo and myself can make head and tail of this place. It is my first time down here, apart from the interview drive where I spent a good bit of time around the dam. Wonderful to be out and exploring. That's the wonderful thing about this area. There's always somewhere new to go. And we're going to be heading back up north, where I believe my friend Ralph has got some cats for you.
Thanks, Steve. And folks, we've had to move a little bit because we didn't see the lions coming through the thicket, and so we just wanted to double back and make sure that they hadn't gone to ground, which it seems that's exactly what they've done, because that little white dot in the middle of your screen is indeed a lion. So that's where they are. Well, at least one of them. And it seems like she's lying down. Now, we've just been trying to work out if there's another road that's going near to her, and it seems there might be. So in a moment, once we're sure that they're not moving, once again, we're going to try and hot-foot it around and try and get a little bit closer. But unfortunately, for the time being, seems they're catching a little bit of a power nap, so we might need to move along a little bit and see what we find in between here and finding a road that's going towards them. We did look on Google Maps, and it seems like there is a little faint road that's heading there towards them, so we're going to try and find it. But at least we've been able to re-establish where they are exactly. So good job to Manu there in the back. He's got his eagle eyes on. And so we're going to start up and now try and head round towards them. So come along with us and see what we find along the way as well. We'll always stop for that. We know. Try and loop around and get a bit closer to them. 4 lions on the move, on the hunt, now gone down for a little snooze. That's what's happening here if you've just joined us. We're on Safari Live and we've been following hunting female lionesses. Now, Shezi, who's a new viewer, she's saying, oh my goodness, that's big lions. Do we know what pride of lions it is? It seems like, now we are taking a bit of a guess, that it's maybe there has been this talk of a marsh breakaway pride. Maybe they're spending a little bit of time away from each other, or the greater marsh pride. But this is 4 females, adult females, and 2 of them at least have got swollen mammary glands. So it seems like they've maybe come together again as the marsh pride. This is their territory here, with the marsh just going to come out in front of us. And so it seems that would make sense. Now, we are getting roads that are leading in that general direction, and very often the little button quails and quails are running in the road as we drive along, just bumping up next to us. Lots of your little grassland birds. We try not, often try and spot them, because they do wait until the last second to fly out of the way. I always get scared that I'm going to drive one of them over, but I haven't yet. It's very often the same when I've seen a friend of mine does falconry, and he uses pointers, dogs, so German pointers and English pointers that go in to find the francolin and the game birds, and then he's got his peregrine falcon or lanner falcon on his arm, and once the dogs go on point, which is that they've found the quarry, he takes the hood off the bird and he lets it go up, and obviously try to get a little bit of thermal so it can get some height, and those dogs go almost touching their noses onto the francolin and the spurfowl, but once that bird is up, they will not move, because they're more scared of the francolin, of the falcon, than they are of the dog. So it's incredible to see that this francolin just sitting staring at the dog with no problem, because that falcon's up in the air. But incredible to watch that. Once the falcon is up high enough, then he will clap the dogs in, and the dogs then bump the francolin up, and he does a hey, 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 and you can hear the bird flying as he closes his wings. It almost sounds like an aeroplane, because it and he levels out behind it, and then you just see feathers. So very interesting sport that, but it was started by the Arabs, and a sport of royalty there. But what they used to do was not let the falcon actually kill the birds. They used to take feathers out of whichever bird it had managed to catch, and then put it in their hat. So I've even seen a lanner falcon. I've seen a lanner falcon take down, not kill, but take down a Goliath heron. And so that was obviously, that royal guy was quite well thought of. So while we try to relocate these lions and get a better position, folks, let's send you back to Tristan, who's sitting with the old man Mvula.
I am indeed, and the sun has come out now, which is pretty much baking, and he was fast asleep, but I think he's getting too hot, so I wouldn't be surprised he does begin to start moving again and maybe tries to find himself a little bit of shade to go and rest in. But now that we've kind of pulled up alongside of him, you can see that he's starting to show signs of age quite heavily. His body is not looking what it used to, so from the front he looks quite good, but if you look on his hips there, you can see that there's a lot of atrophy of that muscle, and that he's lost a lot of weight since the last time I saw him, and he's starting to look a little older and skinnier than he's looked before. So it's not really nice when you see that, but at the end of the day, he has had a long innings, and it is a good age for a male leopard, so you can't grumble too much. And well, it also could change. He could get himself 3 or 4 impalas in a row, and he'll be absolutely fine again for another couple of months. So hopefully that will be the case, but he's definitely a lot skinnier than the last time I saw him. He's dropped a lot of weight, particularly on those back legs area, and I'll be interested to see when he stands up whether or not he's very skinny, or if it's just kind of a angle that he's sitting that's making it look worse than it actually is. But I surmise that he's a little skinnier than we actually think. Either way though, he's still got a massive set of shoulders and neck on him. He's still a beautiful cat, and I was talking to VM now about his right ear area. It looks as though he's been looking for warthog piglets again. Mvula used to love warthog piglets. He used to go after them regularly. And he's got lots of dust around the back side of his ears and his neck area. You can see it's all dirty in that section. So he's managed to somehow shove his head into some hole somewhere looking for some sort of food item. Like I say, he also goes after porcupines a lot. I've seen him going after aardvarks and various other creatures that live inside these mounds and burrows. It's not a
uncommon thing to watch him do it. And even his tail looks all dusty as well. He's got kind of, the black is all covered in grey dust, so I don't know what he's been doing or where he's been up to, but it seems as though he's had some sort of fun diving into a hole somewhere. Now, like I say, I'm pretty sure he's getting hot. You can see his breathing has changed as well. He's starting to pant a little bit now. Mouth is open. He's kind of trying to just cool that body down a bit, and the sun is really blazing onto him full steam ahead. And so I think if he's going to move, it will be shortly. I'm pretty certain that he's going to try and find some shade somewhere. I doubt that he's just going to lie right out in the sun. It's never the most pleasant thing to do, but look at those beautiful eyes in this afternoon light. He still has incredible eyes, even though he's an older individual. His eyes are mesmerizing. They kind of that light color, much lighter than most of the other leopards that we see out here. And his lineage is kind of quite long. There's a few males that share the same traits that he's got, and it's why Tumba always is a bit of an enigma to me, because theoretically Mvula didn't mate with Tandi at that period, so that when Tumba was born, but Tumba has so many traits of Mvula, it's scary. He's got the big ears, he's got the light colored eyes, and his general shape of his face is very similar to that of Mvula and that of a lot of Mvula's offspring. So if you compare Tumba to Wabayiza and to Bahuti and some of the others, they all look very similar. So you see he's going to yawn now, and that's often a sign that he might stand up and go. You'll also notice he's got a broken right canine. Now that's been like that for many months. It's the first time I noticed it was right at the beginning of the year, but there we go, up he gets, and I'm pretty sure he's going to try and find himself some shade. So he is a little skinny. You can see he's not as bad as I actually thought when he was lying down. I thought he would be a lot skinnier than that, but he's got one or two little wounds on him, which is not ideal. He's got like a little cut on him. Are you going to lie right in front of the car? I can't even see him. He's somewhere in that section over there. Now, is he going to drink maybe? I'm not sure. I'm trying to just lean out the car to try and see. Hopefully I don't fall. The last time we did that we had a bit of an issue, but at least VM can see him now. I just want him to see if he's going to settle before I reposition myself, but it looks as though he might decide to go and have a little bit of a drink of water. There's also a nice shady section under one of these trees, and so maybe that's where he's headed. But let's see, maybe if we just go back slightly, Vildi. So you can see he's been around vehicles for quite some time, has Mvula, and so it doesn't really stress him too much for us to kind of move a little bit. But I just want to try and give him a bit of space. It's never comfortable to be that close to a leopard, and especially when there's a little bit of shade that he's trying to find. You can see he's lying right next to some water. Right, now that he's down properly, now I can reposition nicely and we can get a better view of him. So we're just going to turn the car a little bit. There we go, Vim. It will be a lot easier. So he's found himself a small sliver of shade just on the edge of a mud wallow, and you can see why it's so tough to find leopards at the moment at this time of the year. We struggle a lot more because if you look how much water is in the bush here, and we were talking about it just now with Vim, is that there's very little sign of his tracks on the road, and so if you miss the tracks and he walks into a section like this, because of how dense it is and the fact that there is water here, it's going to make it really very difficult, to find him. You'd have to try and kind of find mud wallow to mud wallow, but he's definitely on the skinnier side, and that's very kind of him to have walked the way he did to go and have a drink of water, because he's now given us a beautiful view of him lapping up that nice cool water from the side. Shame boy, are you hot? Yes, not surprised. He lay in the sun for quite some time before he decided to get up and move, and maybe in his younger days he would have moved a lot quicker, but when they're older like this, they do sometimes just sit and take it easy for a longer period, and then that body temperature goes up quite drastically, and they then have to obviously try and cool down. So water is great for him, and a little bit of shade there to drink from as well, which is perfect. So I'm pretty sure he's going to have a nice long drink before he'll flop down in the shade again and wait for it to get a bit cooler before he starts to try and look for a meal. He definitely will be looking for a meal at some point. Now if you look just above his left front leg, you'll see that there is a bit of a wound that is just on there. It's not a very big one, but right there in the middle there's a little kind of cut that's on that area. Now I believe my comms are not working, which is very true here, so we'll try and sort that out quickly. Let's have a look. Hold on, Louise, we have a pulled out earpiece. There we go. Now we're back in comms, so Louise can start talking to us again, which will be good. So he's probably going to find himself that shady section there, and he's going to lie down, I would imagine. It's a perfect spot for him to go. There we go, Louise, I can hear you now. Sorry, my earpiece pulled out when we repositioned the car, so that's why I couldn't hear you. First Lady Shah, you're wondering if Tingana knows that Mvula is hanging around. In all likely, probably he does know that there are males around. Whether he knows it's Mvula, I'm not quite sure. Tingana will know that there's pressure on him at the moment from multiple different males. He's got issues with this young male that's around. He's got a situation where he's got, you know, Mvula, there's quarantine, there's Fasana, there's Tamba, so it's not just Mvula that's around, and Tingana knows that, so he's going to be moving around quite a lot to try and sort of figure out who it is and try and push them out. The thing about Mvula is he's very clever, is that he doesn't scent mark, he doesn't vocalize, he doesn't cause any kind of stir that would attract Tingana to that area and cause him to try and kind of chase after him. So he's clever in that he just sort of is like a ghost, and he just moves around in here without trying to attract too much attention to himself. But definitely if Tingana walked down the road now, he would have picked up Mvula's scent and then followed it to try and see where he is. But he's found himself a nice little shady spot. I don't think he's going to be up for much longer. I think he's probably going to go crashing down for a little nap. But I'll try and reposition to see if I can get a better view of him and exactly where he's sort of lying down. Hopefully we'll be able to see him nice and clearly. While I do that, and while I find a better spot to sit, let's go back across to Steve, who is taking a leaf out of Steph's book and he seems to be admiring some big tall trees.
Welcome back from very old leopards apparently to immovable trees. We have decided to stop and give you a little glimpse at something quite special. I think it's special because these trees are part of the landscape. I know James spoke quite extensively about this tree this morning, and those of you out there, I'm sure, can identify it quite quickly. Looking at the bark of the tree, quite obvious to see the shape. First of all, the tree just needs a little cuddle, because that's what trees do. You can feel the energy in trees. They do talk to you. If you believe that or not, it's up to you. But this beautiful tree, look at the bark. It looks like someone's been hitting golf balls against the bark. It leads to this sort of indented sort of bark shape. I can't give you a better explanation than that, but think of the golf balls swinging and hitting that. Beautiful trees for leopards to climb. I'm sure you've all seen it before, and if not, these are the places where you find a leopard just stretched out, legs over the branches, just surveying the landscape. Something that, you know, if we could, we would do. I would choose a tree like this to hide in. But the reason I stopped, because this tree is a favorite for elephants, as we know, not just because of the fruits, but also because of the bark. And over here you can actually see where the bark has been damaged by the tusk of an elephant. The elephant stuck its tusk here and ripped that bark off. And what's very interesting about it is elephants, if you think chickens are clever or elephants aren't clever, think about chickens. Chickens will self-medicate. If you plant medicinal plants in your garden, chickens will physically eat those things that they need to deworm themselves, to add whatever medicinal value they need. So I'm pretty sure elephants are smarter than chickens. And this tree, the bark itself, if you ever have an issue with a bee sting or something that you need antihistamine for, you can take some of this bark. I'm not going to damage the tree now. Take some of the bark, just stick it in, pull it off the cambium itself. It's very red and orange inside. And what the elephant has done is just taken a strip of that. Maybe he wasn't feeling very well, maybe had some issues inside, maybe eaten something wasn't very tolerant of. Anti-inflammatories inside, elephant feels good. But one of the reasons for me stopping is not to talk about elephants, not to talk really about the marula tree, but to harp on back to a bird like the crested barbet, birds like the woodpeckers. Because what is the purpose of bark? Folks, what is the purpose of bark? Bark in the savanna industry, when there's lots of grass here, the fire comes up, and this is fire resistant. Fire resistant, it's also insect resistant. It prevents it from losing any moisture to the atmosphere. But now what has happened? There is a hole We're not seeing too much activity here at the moment, but this wood is now exposed. You're going to get wood borers like your wood boring beetles, your giant longhorn beetle, which will actually burrow in here with a very long sort of proboscis-like depository, and then it'll lay eggs inside, and then these grubs will grow inside, and that is what the woodpeckers are going for. Woodpeckers will land on a branch like this, they will listen, and then they'll peck. Tree's not too dead at the moment, but the longhorn beetles and activity like that inside will actually lead to branches of the wood dying and potentially even the branch falling off. But then what that leads to is activity of a hole forming. The barbet can come along, honey guides who are parasites of certain birds, your starlings. It's about 29 species that potentially in a couple of years, when this activity opens up and we get a little niche, we'll have bird species that are able to breed and colonize in just one small marula tree that we have on the reserve. There are many of them. There is much activity, much elephant activity. There's some elephant dung just here at my feet, if you can see down here. And most of what is in the dung right now is grass. So the damage that happens, this normally happens in the winter times when the condition's gone, there's hardly any grass, there's hardly any leaves, the vegetation is just at a very poor quality. Elephants need to move around and they need to gather medicinal properties in the vegetation to make them feel better. We all know in winter time we start getting a bit sick, we start feeling a bit ill, we need to dose up. If I had a lighter with me now, which unfortunately I don't, I would burn this for you, and I would give Senzo a little ceremony. You burn this and you inhale it and you burn it around you, and the Sangomas, the Nyangas, the traditional healers of the area actually use this stuff for medicinal healing. Because what is the elephant? An elephant is a massive medicinal plant collector and then just deposits it wherever. As I say that, in the summer months the grass component is not that great in medicinal value, but when you find elephant dung, it's very orange, it's very red. There's huge amounts of medicinal value in there. With their very poor digestive system, we can access out of that. Lots of animals are reliant on that. But as we talk more and more about the environment here, we're going to maybe just climb back on the vehicle, see if we can keep going, get another update on the radio. We are in Chitwa, still exploring. It is warming up a little bit. I don't think leopards are going to be doing too much activity, so we've got to keep our eyes open for marula trees like this with potentially a cat sprawled inside or maybe underneath. Let's see how we go. We're going to jump back on. Senzo, you ready? Very good, very good. Not only is the marula tree fantastic for all of that, it is great for shade. If I'd parked us just a few meters forward, Senzo would have been a little bit more comfortable in the shade of the tree. And that is important in the savanna ecosystem, is that the shade that we have here is what enables the herbivores, especially the ruminants, to where to shelter. You feed out there in the ecosystem, you feed, and then you need to lie down in the shade. If we didn't have shade, we wouldn't have the diversity of the herbivore species that we have. So the savanna, grassland, forest, all mixed together. Ancient forests were once here, but climate change changed that, and that's why we have the large herbivores that we have. That's a lovely breeze that we have now coming through, and we're going to be okay. So a wonderful tree. Oh, there's an impala. Can you see it? There he runs, she runs. She's a little bit skittish. She's on her own. But we're going to link up to the north where we have an animal that enjoys the water, and I think Taylor's got something with a ring on its bum.
We do have waterbuck in the Mara. That's exactly what we've got. We've got quite a big group of females here, and they're all starting to look rather fat. So I suppose after the activities we've been witnessing, mating waterbuck, I've seen that a couple of times, they should be expecting. Now, typically waterbuck will give birth in the summer, much like the impala do. However, it's only a little bit just after the impala, and that's of course down in South Africa. So whether or not it's going to be the same here, I'm not so sure. I would imagine they would give birth between the rainy seasons, the short rains and then the big rains, because that's going to be when the vegetation will be most lush, and of course, well, the conditions are just really, really good for the waterbuck, so the chances of survival for those youngsters will be quite good. but I'm not exactly sure when it will be. They don't look overly pregnant just yet, but you can definitely start to see a bulge in their bellies. But we'll watch them swell, and we'll soon see their mammary glands start to swell up too, and that'll be another indication. But just munching away on the reeds, on the grass. They love living in the marsh at the moment. I'm sure they'll be happy that it was topped up a little bit. But there's some cars coming, or there's a car coming that's going to drive right through our shot in a minute. So before that even happens, let's carry on. The Mara seems to not be as busy as what it has been, which is quite nice. I think everybody's gone home. Thank you, Waterback. Bye, Waterback. Actually, there's one female I want to show you. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, I hope I can get out. Yes, I'm just going to go backwards. And then I want to look at this waterback here that's staring at me. That slid into a bit of a marshy spot trying to move off the road for the cars. She looks particularly pregnant. Out of all of them here, she's the fattest of the lot. You're beautiful. And the light is lovely now too. Just starting to go a little bit golden. We're not going to have a proper sunset or anything like that, unfortunately, because of that very thick haze out at the moment. Also, quite noisy eaters too. Not quite like the zebra though. I think the zebras and the elephants win the award for being the loudest chewers. Wonderful. I'm just starting to look. The mammary glands are starting to swell just slightly. Oh, not again. Try and jump out of here quickly. Now Paula, great question. We're going to keep moving and see what else we can get up along the way. You're wondering how long are waterbacks pregnant for? What's the gestation period? It's about 9 months, 8.5, 9 months or so. So it's a relatively long time. And it's weird because I saw some of the waterback were mating when I first arrived, and then I've still seen males chasing after the girls and trying to mate with them. So that's like a 4-month difference. And what we do know happens is that some animals, there's almost like 3 times that they give birth within a space of a few months. In the beginning, you know, the ones that are keen and early, and then the bulk of the antelope and gazelle species, and then again you'll get some that are late. I've even seen some impalas that are all swollen again, like they're about to give birth. So it's really interesting. And a few Tommies, a few Thompson's gazelles, they haven't given birth either. So I suppose the conditions are so great here. Like I said, anywhere from September, October, right through until you get the big rains in April, May. You know, that time sort of in between will be a great time to have a little one bounding around. So I suppose it could be off for a few months. It's very quiet. Oh, we did pass our nest with that crowned crane. Do you know that I had to say grey crowned crane, grey crowned crane, grey crowned crane like 100 times? Poor Archie had to listen to me for 5 minutes as I said this, because I couldn't say it when we saw those chicks. I was too overwhelmed. I can say it now though. So I saw that nest I was telling you about near Hippo Pools, and that female's still incubating those eggs. So that's good news. So she's not standing up. So it'll just be interesting to see, and we'll keep checking every time we go past her to be able to see exactly how big they are when they're born. I don't know how much they would weigh or how big they would be in size. I mean, I'm just looking at them. I've never actually held one. I've held an ostrich chick before, many ostrich chicks. We used to find them wandering around on their own all the time, and then we tried to raise them, but we had one that had a gammy leg that unfortunately didn't make it. We had that for a little while too. Lots of ostrich in the Eastern Cape. Hang on. Archie's there, car behind me. Yeah, I can do the reverse. Remember those birds I was trying to find you for the last 2 days that have been avoiding me? And I just very quickly want to show you, because I was telling you about them and how they make beautiful sounds all through the night outside at Sila's house, Sila's camp in the Masai Mara National Reserve, and here they sit on this little shrub. Finally, the Rupel's starling eating some delicious berries. Well, it's quite nice to see. Anyways, Ralph, however, has got something very exciting for you, and it's not just one. Apparently, there are 3.
Thanks, Taylor. Yep. And I'm going to actually let the viewers tell me what we are looking at. So, what are we looking at, folks? It's in the long grass. There's 3 of them, and it's quite difficult to make out exactly what they are. But let's see who sends it in first. Send it to the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or on the YouTube live chat. Let's hear your guesses, and I'll tell you if you're right. It's quite unusual to be finding them in this kind of habitat, especially in my experience. But we do see them in the Mara quite regularly, walking around in the grassland, but quite unusual. Must be down to the richness of the grazing available. Come on, folks, what are we looking at? Let's hear it. There is indeed 3 of them. There's one very big one there. There's a much smaller one just off on the left, and then there's one medium-sized one just in front of this very big one. No guesses? Come on, folks. So, Phil, Joe, and Cecilia, you are the winners. Yes, indeed, it is rhino, and it's black rhino, to be specific, but you got it spot on. Look at that, in the long grass, eh? Who would have guessed it? Seeing 3 black rhino in the open plains, nothing else for miles, except grass, grass, and more grass. But what a wonderful sighting all the same. They're not very far off, but they're very well hidden in the grass, and I think that's probably why they're quite happy just to stay there, because you normally find them in the thickets, and during the day they are generally quite immobile, and they do like to snooze a bit, and then a little bit more active at night. And that's a little baby there. You can see his funnel-shaped ears, always listening, turning them every which way. At the moment, I think he's trying to keep the flies at bay as well. But it looks like they are doing what black rhino do during the day and resting, maybe even snoozing. But in the very long grass. And there at least we got to see his head, but he's now doing exactly what the lions did to us, and he's gone and laid down. But it looks like that's mommy and calf there. And what happens with black rhino is it's the same with white rhino. Black rhino not quite as much as with white rhino. White rhino, they have a very strong motherly bond with the calves, and you can find 2, sometimes even 3 calves of different age groups staying with mommy. But what happens then is when the female comes into estrus, a bull will come around, but he'll chase off that calf, so the calf then disappears sort of onto the fringes and just stays out of harm's way while he then courts the mother. And once they've done their thing, then baby is allowed back. Well, the bull sort of generally moves off, and then the calf can move back. Now, Fezzi, you're asking, aren't black rhino more aggressive than white rhino? Absolutely, Fezzi. And to be straight to the point, black rhino is one of the big 5, not white rhino. We spoke about this the other day, and I said to everybody that black rhino was chosen as one of the big 5 because of its aggressive nature and how dangerous it is. But people generally use the generic name rhino to say that they have big 5 animals on their reserve, but it's not white rhino. It was chosen as such for the 5 most dangerous animals to hunters, which was leopard, lion, buffalo, elephant, and black rhino, not white rhino. So The next time you go on safari and they tell you that they've got big 5 on their reserve, ask them where the black rhino are. If they can't tell you and they say no, they've got white rhino, well, they're not being totally honest, are they? But here we are with one of the big 5, and lovely to see. We don't have any white rhino here in the Mara. It's only the black rhino, and this is Diceros bicornis bicornis, the larger version of the black rhino. He's almost the size of a white rhino, and it's the same ones that you get in Namibia, and that is where you have the largest population of black rhino. Melissa, you're wondering if it's possible for rhino to have twins. I think it probably is possible, very rare, but I'm sure there has been some cases. Normally you have one baby, but there can be very rare cases of 2. And I know with big animals like this, when there is the case of twins, very often there can be the case where they either both stillborn or one of them stillborn or very weak. I don't know if it's as a result of being in the womb and there's not enough space, or they don't get enough nutrients, or what. I'm not a vet and I'm not a doctor, so I can't explain that to you, but I'm pretty sure that I have read that and researched on it. And it seems that very rare cases of twins, and even rarer for both of them to survive. But here we are with one little youngster, and like I was saying, so this being the Diceros bicornis bicornis, the really big black rhino, in the KwaZulu-Natal region of South Africa, we get the Diceros bicornis minor, which is also black rhino, but a slight variation, and they're a lot smaller than these black rhino. So as we look over the top of the grass here and try and make out the shapes of the black rhino, there's the youngster walking through. You could just see the silhouette of his horns. But I think we're going to send you on south, all the way back to South Africa, because Steve is waiting to show you a whole myriad of animals.
A myriad indeed. Thank you, Ralph. This is unbelievable to see this amount of game together. I must admit I would love to be seeing some black rhino right now. They are very, very special and very hard to come by. I'd love to have another look at them. But look at this, folks. We're in the open clearing just, let me get my bearings, just north, I think, no, south of Chitwa Dam. And we've got zebra, many zebra, well, maybe two small harems, lots of impala, and then a huge accumulation of waterbuck. Look at all these impala. The babies, they are definitely breeding. If anyone is missing impala on the Sabi Sands, they're all here at Chitwa Dam. And going back to what Taylor was talking about in the north about the waterbuck, we have waterbuck here. I don't know the genetic difference. I've never been up north, but the difference you can clearly see there on the bottom of the waterbuck. We've got only a single ring here, and the inside is grey, whereas north, I believe, it is a completely white circle, and the inside is the same colour. Why exactly they have a difference, I have absolutely no idea, but it is something worth investigating. But to go back to the story of the waterbuck and the white ring on the tail, my mother told me as a very young boy that it is the ring of the waterbuck because it was the first animal on Noah's Ark to sit on the toilet, and yet it got painted, and so it got a very white bum. So that is quite a nice story to remember from a child. And there we have waterbuck ruminating on top of the termite mound. Not only do predators use it for a vantage point, we have prey animals doing it too. You see he's chewing gum? Not actually chewing gum, folks. She is busy ruminating, and how I can tell it's a she is lacking those horns on the top. But it's difficult to see clearly, but with a ruminating animal, they regurgitate the cud. You can see the cheeks are quite full there. And if we can get right up on the neck, Sens, can you? Is that about as far as you can go? Okay, right up on the neck. If you see, it's difficult with the waterbuck because they're so furry. But if you look closely, as soon as it stops chewing, see if you can see a movement down the throat, the front of the throat. Let's see, we're going to count it down. 3, 2, Turn to the right. Okay, this is not working very well. But on a lot of animals, giraffe included, you can actually see that bolus going from the chewing in the mouth, and then they swallow, it goes down to the belly, and then they regurgitate again once into the mouth. It's quite a funny process to watch. They are basically vomiting in their mouth, folks, which doesn't sound that attractive to many people, but it is what these herbivores do, and the ruminants do it to get maximum benefit out of the vegetation. So what these waterbuck have done is they were feeding, and then they come and stand in a shady spot, or in the case of that individual, that male of theirs just stood up. He's now walking. You can tell the really big horns of the male. We got a whiff of him just now. It's very, very strong odor. Smells very, very potent, like very cheap perfume. Very cheap perfume, not something anyone would ever want to buy, but apparently the ladies seem to like it. And there he goes. Look at those incredibly large horns. And those horns, folks, are for fighting, for rights to females. He's far bigger than the other ones we've seen. And he's also always a bit tentative. You see how he walks a few paces and stops, ears alert, sniffing. The wind is coming across him, so he would be picking up the smell of any predator in the area. But he's leaving the safety of this large group. And when you're in a large group like this, as I said yesterday, it's very easy to relax because someone is always watching. But he's going off on his own there, which is not a good idea. And then we have the zebras, a harem of zebra. This would only see one in picture now. There would be a dominant male. There would be a dominant male and then a couple females that he would have included in his harem. And obviously the older and more dominant the male, the more females he has. So folks, we're going to stay here with these animals and see if anything happens. We are still on the search for Hosana and any activity. Herbivores are very good indicators of the presence of leopards, and when there are numbers like this, we will keep our ears and eyes open. I'm going to be sending you across to Tristan. I'm not quite sure what he's up to, but I'm sure it's going to be very exciting.
Well, no, not quite. Mvula is fast asleep, so very little excitement at this stage. The old man has walked quite a long way since you last saw us. He's walked long and hard, and of course now that it's time for you guys to come and see him walking, he's now flopped over and had a good nap. So now he's decided he's found himself a comfortable spot. This is where he's going to rest for a while longer, but like I say, we've walked almost to Philemon's Dip now, so he's come from Twin Dam side all the way through this block and kind of negotiate through that way, and has decided that this is where he's going to rest for now. I wonder if it's maybe because there's some sort of signs of holes in the ground here, so maybe there's warthogs or porcupines or something that he's picked up on that he's decided he's going to nap here. You can see there's a few holes there that he's lying very close to, and he kind of walked past it and then turned and came and lay back in this area. So I'm not sure if it's that or if it's just a nice cool spot. The thing is though, is when the sun is out, it is hitting him on the side, and so I wonder if he'll get hot again like he did on that termite mound and then start to move around and maybe start heading down towards sort of Philemon's Dip side itself, or even maybe up to Quarantine. If he goes up to Quarantine, well, we know that there's a number of wildebeest up there that he could potentially go after. Whether or not he's capable of bringing down a young wildebeest in his condition, I'm not quite sure. I would imagine he would be. I mean, he's still got a lot of power in those front legs, and when the adrenaline is pumping, he'll definitely be able to still run quite quickly and, you know, be able to grab things. So I'm pretty sure he would go after those young ones, and so maybe he'll head up that way and get himself a meal. As much as I would want Footloose and them to survive, it would be also nice for Mvula to get himself a substantial meal at some point. It's definitely needed, and if he's going to survive the summer period, he's going to need to eat very, very well. What surprises me though is that I would have thought, given the amount of lambs and baby animals that we've had around, an old experienced male like this would have taken advantage of that, and that he would have been in slightly better condition than what he is right now. And suppose we are late in the birthing season now for things like impalas, and maybe this next wave of impala births that we will get, because remember there's almost two sort of ruts within the impala population, and particularly this last year we had them rutting very late, all the way into June, July, which would mean that we would start to see another couple births around this sort of period, so January, February. So maybe he can take advantage of those and be able to get himself a good meal at some point. But he'll need a couple baby impalas to try and get some of that weight back on once again, because it's going to just keep getting worse the longer he doesn't eat, and so he's going to need to find some sort of food at some point. You'll find he'll also start regressing back to what we saw from Hosanna when he was younger, is that he was, eating terrapins and tortoises and monitor lizards. So you'll find Mvula will start going after those things just to try and get by until such time as he can get himself something slightly bigger, and he's probably going to start scavenging. So even if he comes across somebody like Tundi on a kill or Shadow on a kill, you might find that he'll scavenge from them and try and take it. And like what we saw with the wild dogs a few weeks ago with Noel, where he came running in to try and grab them. Right, well, he's still sleepy, he's still taking it very easy. There's a few flies bugging his ears, and the sun hopefully is going to come out again just now, which might drive him to start walking once again. If he does, though, it would be quite nice. It would be nice if he moves out into a slightly better spot than he's lying at the moment, because he's got a bit of a difficult visual. But while we sit here and wait, let's go back across to the Mara and Taylor with a beautiful view.
Look how gorgeous this is. I didn't think we were going to see much of the sun today, but it has just poked its head out just to say good night, I suppose, out here in the Mara, because in the next 5 to 8 minutes, somewhere around there, it's going to drop beyond the Olololo escarpment. But it is a very, very pretty scene out here today, with the shades of pink and purple, and then of course the dark blue that the Olololo escarpment is this evening, and all the Balanites trees. It's very, very pretty. I think we're going to start seeing lots and lots of elephants and baboons, even more so in this area, because some of these Balanites trees have got some fruit on them again, and they're going to want to gobble that up, which will be quite nice for them. There's every now and then there's a few starlings flying around as well. There's lots of Hildebrand starlings up today. And there was some superb as well. You often see both of those species together. They look very similar. Are you going to fly? Yeah, of course they are. Too quick for me, unfortunately. The Hildebrand starlings are just flying past us. They don't want to sit still on the road. Unlike those Abdom storks and those grey-crowned cranes, which are all behaving very, very well this afternoon. I'm trying to figure out what on earth is going on with the weather. I think we might have a clearer day tomorrow, although no, there's just the next set of fogs and clouds and all sorts of things coming in from the north and from the east. But at least it's starting to look clear. That's gorgeous. Let's have another view. Wow, it's changing. It's amazing how it changes so quickly. Wow. That is absolutely breathtaking. And I'm sad we didn't see the full moon either. What a pity. We'll have to get it next time. We don't often get to see the moon, unfortunately. Most of the evenings seem to be so cloudy out here. It doesn't get much... I was just about to say it doesn't get much better than that, but it seems as though I'm going to have to eat my words, because I can see where Ralph is. He's just off in the distance, and he's got another view.
Yes, folks, welcome back, and look at this fantastic sunset. It is absolutely stunning, and I just need to be slightly careful here because we've got a big bull elephant in must. So he's making his way across towards us. I'm just talking with my voice raised a little bit, just so that he also knows that I'm here, folks. But if he does turn, I will be starting the vehicle and driving away. If Manu can just show, look on the back legs. He's in full must, and that's obviously why he's joined this herd. So he's looking to court a female, and he's got massive tusks, and we don't want to be taking any chances. So if he turns towards us and makes out as if he wants to be a little bit naughty, buddy, then I will be moving off. Okay, folks, so because we don't like confrontation with the animals, and we do understand that they are a little bit more aggressive when they're in this phase. Keep walking, buddy. And he's a very big, beautiful elephant. Wow. But he can also be a little bit naughty when he's in this phase. Okay, folks, I'm just going to move forward. going to turn around so you can have a look. I just wanted to get out of their way because the herd was getting a little bit agitated with this bull as well. And then that can result in him taking it out on us. So we've got a little bit more space now between us, and then now we can relax a bit. It's a shame we did miss that perfect sunset, but look at this, a whole herd of elephants walking past, and now we're in lovely safe distance. He was just looking a little bit mischievous, and in that frame of mind we don't want to press the subject because he's obviously trying his luck with the females here, and they can very often turn him down, and then he can take it out on the next best thing that comes along, and that can be a vehicle or anything like that. And if you're on foot, you're also wanting to just avoid bull elephants like that. But wow, look at this, we can enjoy this fantastic movement of these elephants coming through. Now I just wanted to recap a little bit from our drive this afternoon, because it seems that we were talking about it here on board, myself and Manu, and we've had an absolutely magnificent drive today. We've had elephants and buffalo and lion and black rhino, and it seems Tristan has completed the puzzle of the big five as we were talking about earlier, and he's got your leopard. So there are people that very often brag about going on one game drive and finding the big five. Now it's not about bragging rights, but I think we've done pretty well today. Wouldn't you think so, Manu? So it is absolutely stunning from up here. Just beyond these elephants, off in that grassland there, is where we did spot those black rhino, but even from here they're very difficult to see. So we just sit with the elephants and watch them pass through. You see this guy, that he's not thinking straight, and he is really pushing his luck with the females. So they can very often get very agitated when there's a bull like this around, and he's obviously not a small fellow either, so he can be rather pushy, and they can also be rather pushy back. So that's just why we took a little bit of evasive action, because we don't want to be getting in between that kind of behavior with elephants. And sometimes you can just be in the middle of it. Now, Fezzi, you're asking why or how I knew that he was getting agitated. Well, just before you came to us on screen, he dropped every little blade of grass that he was busy with, and he concentrated totally on us, and he started to walk with a lot of intent towards the vehicle. And that's normally the sign with elephants, that they have taken notice of you and they're coming over to say hello. Now, normally that's not a problem, because elephants are very inquisitive, and it's lovely to have them around, and they are curious about the smells of the vehicle and probably the noise that we make and weird and wonderful sounds that humans produce. We probably also smell quite bad. And so they are very curious, and they can come towards you, but with what we know about this bull and the generality of bull elephants in must, we don't want to be hanging around a big bull like this that's firstly intent on coming towards us, and secondly we know that when they are in must they have a slight inkling of being a little bit aggressive, because they're not getting their way with the girls, and so they want to take it out on us. And what Manu's showing you there is he's leaking from his penis constantly, and that is a sure way of knowing that this elephant is in must. You can actually smell it as well. So it's a very strong musty smell, musk, not must, a musk with a K, not, but it's very close in the words. And you can actually see it, you can smell it, and you can see in his behavior as well. Right, everybody, that's the wonderful view that we have, but we're going to send you on south all the way back to South Africa with Steve, who's got one of those tiny little arthropods in a massive nest.
Welcome back, folks, from very large aggregation of elephants to an aggregation of a different kind. For those of you who are a little bit queasy about spiders, you might want to look away for this, but here we have a community nest spider, and this is something quite unique for me. Now, the big ball on the right is the actual nest, but what we have just on the left of the screen, if you just move a little bit left there we have it, folks. That is, I don't know how many, but it's definitely more than 10 small spiders that have caught some fly-like creature. I didn't go too close to investigate because I didn't want to scare them away. This for me is the first that I've seen. I know the story behind these spiders. I know that there we go, you can see some more coming in from the side. This is incredible stuff. I have never actually witnessed this before. I've heard tale of how these creatures work, but if you have a bit of a fear of spiders, you might not want to pay attention. But they have a kill, folks, a kill of the small kind. What we are witnessing is community web spiders that basically, as the name implies, they build a nest together, that first ball that we looked at, and they accumulate their web to enable them to do so. And then, because they are quite small, the amount of web they produce, they're able to catch critters and insects that are far bigger than they would be able to catch on their own. And what they are all doing at the moment is sucking the life force out of that fly-like creature that I didn't get a very good look at, but they are quite immobile right now, with, as you saw, a few more joining from the side. There we go, look at them. So the web would have caught the insect, and then I'm not sure too much about the venom of these spiders. It's something I'm going to have to look up. But with the number of them there, they just overpower the insect and then just suck the juices from it. Most insects, as we know, are full of juice inside, full of hemolymph, and all the spiders do is just insert their fangs and just drink it up like you would a milkshake. Might not taste as good as a milkshake. On that note, my mouth got a little bit interested in tasting a chocolate milkshake right now, but that's another matter. There we go, very nice visual of an individual community web spider. Is he going out to maybe repair some of the web that was damaged? I'm unsure, but he definitely has a little toe line. If you can see just on the bottom of his bum there's a little bit of web attached to him. It's possible that he's doing some repairs while the others are eating. Maybe he's had his fill. A big insect landing in a web like this often damages the web, and obviously if you want your nets, as a good fisherman knows, you want to catch fish, you have to repair the holes. So they would work in groups to repair that, but this is the first I've ever seen them out of the web. I've always heard the story that if you take a tuning fork, people use it for all sorts of musical instruments, and you gong it just next to the web, they will all come out in mass. I've always wanted to buy one. I always keep forgetting when I'm at the music store, but today we have a very special sighting. Nice little aggregation of these community webs. It's been very quiet this morning. Haven't been many questions. I wonder where everybody is. Anybody interested in spiders out there? Because these are one of those very understudied critters. I know in South Africa we don't have too much information on spiders. The books are still in the infancy. So even with the spider ID book I have, there's no mention of these in there. They might show you the web, but I've never physically seen an individual, and I probably wouldn't have guessed. I thought he was smaller than that. They're probably about a centimeter or so. Very, very cool, Debbie. I agree. This is a first for me. I don't know. I've been in the bush a long time. I've seen many of the webs, many of the nests, but I've never ever seen this before. And what that spider's doing, the web is made up of protein. All web in spiders is protein, and a lot of spiders are able to actually ingest that protein again in order to just recycle it and use it again through their spinnerets. Most spiders have got more than one spinneret, and they can use it for different types of silk, for web building, for the A-frame structures, for the anchoring points, for the delicate sticky bit that catches, or even the ones that use it for the subduing of the prey, the ones that wrap it around the prey. Different types of silk, just like different types of rope for the climbing industry. This is awesome. Very, very cool. You can pan out just a bit there, Sens. You can give a scale of how small that really is. Very small web. Debbie, the question you're asking is how big are the spiders? And I mean, just from what I saw there, they're no more than about a 0.5 centimeter to 1 centimeter in size, which is quite small, but hence the reason why they accumulate in quite large numbers. I mean, I didn't want to get too close to chasing them away to ruin the visual for you, but there's a handful of them there that's probably about the size of a marble, maybe just bigger than a marble. And if that is the accumulation of insects that are about 0.5 centimeter, there is a whole bundle of them there, which is quite epic to see. Needless to say, that insect inside is completely covered. You cannot see it anymore, but you can now see them moving. There we go. Something has happened. Just see a little bit of it there. It was a bit of an orange-bodied fly with black wings, but I wasn't able to clearly identify. Completely eaten, and the lions move off before you are able to identify what is underneath the marauding mass of carnivores. There's some more coming out of the web now, folks. This is an onslaught of spiders. I'm not sure what the collective name for spiders is, but I think in this case an onslaught is quite relevant. They just go about their business. The temperature's definitely dropped a few degrees. It is really nice and cool out here. And the bush that it is hanging on is a whiteberry bush. I was eating some of them yesterday or the day before, and James had some himself. So the bush is not seeing any negative effects of the spiders being there. We call that commensalism, whereby the tree is basically just going about its business and the spiders are using it for a home. There's no negative effect imparted on the tree itself. And if anything, the spiders probably keep away parasites and pests. But while we stay here with this carnivore, if we could call spiders carnivores, I think we can, very small carnivores. Tristan's got another carnivore for you there. I'm not sure if he's managed to get up and do much, but back to Mvula, let's see what he's doing.
Well, no, he seems to keep doing this to us. Every time you go away, he puts his head up, and every time you come back, he's fast asleep. So I don't know why he's in that mood, but that's the way it is. I think something just piqued his interest, and he was just looking around for a few minutes and back down to sleep at this stage. But I don't think he's going to be down all afternoon. I think we're going to see him starting to wake up. It's getting a lot cooler now, and definitely the sun is starting to kind of dip a little bit, and so hopefully that's going to mean that he's going to start waking up a little bit and start moving around and looking for some sort of food item. He's a cat that is interesting to follow. I've spent some really cool sightings following this guy. I once had a really cool sighting of him on Simambili, where we followed him around, very similar to this actually in the afternoon. He was looking very skinny. It was about, I would say, about 1.5 years ago. He was looking skinny like this, and he didn't really look very good at all, and everyone kind of thought that was going to be the last of him. And we followed him around much the same, and he was walking and kind of flopping down and not really paying too much attention to what was going on. And he went and found a little pan where he started to drink. Next thing, he kind of ears perked up and pricked up a little bit, and he kind of went ambling off towards this termite mound, and then just bolted inside the hole of the termite mound, and there was much commotion, and next thing he emerged with a porcupine, and he was holding the porcupine in his mouth, and the porcupine was squealing and squirming, and he then was managed to kind of kill it and able to feed off it without getting any quills in his face or anything like that. It was actually quite amazing to watch. He just kind of dived in, and there was just sand everywhere, and like I say, this porcupine came out and was not very happy to be dragged out of its hole, that's for sure. And there must have been another one inside there, because once he killed that one, he didn't stop. He went back in and started excavating out, but he just, I don't think, could get to the other one, and then decided to come back out and start feeding off it. And surprisingly, it's amazing actually how much meat is on a porcupine. Everyone always kind of looks at a porcupine and thinks they're mostly quills, and yes, they are. I'd probably say that at least 70% of the body is hair and quills and those kind of things, but there's actually a surprising amount of meat on it. He fed off that porcupine for over a day, so he was still there the next morning and that afternoon, and then he finished it up. What I will say though is a porcupine is a very, very stinky dead dead animal. So there's certain animals that smell, and they smell quite bad, and then there's other animals that are just on the super scale of stinky, and a porcupine is on the super scale. I think it's because it's got quite a lot of fat layers around those quills and sort of subcutaneous fat that's there, and it just really stinks a lot. It's much like a hippo and an elephant in the way that they smell. They really are seriously pungent when they're dead. So it was pretty incredible to watch, though, how he went about it. And then from there, he just went on this streak of porcupine kills. We saw him in about the next 2 weeks. I think he had about 3 or 4 other porcupines. And then he managed to get himself a duiker, and he bounced back into perfect condition again. So even though he looks very skinny now, you'll be surprised how quickly these guys can bounce back when there's food available. So I'm hoping that this afternoon he does decide to do the same sort of thing and wander about, and maybe he gets lucky with finding something like that that's a fairly stationary target, and he can try and then get it out and get some sort of success and some food inside of him. But I definitely think we're going to see him trying to scavenge as well over the next little bit. I'm pretty sure if there's any carcasses that are around, he certainly will try, probably make an appearance, especially with the females, try to chase them off and then try and get a meal out of it that way. Well, he's still an absolutely beautiful animal. I was just thinking about all the times that I've seen him and the hours that we've spent with him. He's probably provided some of my most favorite sightings. I remember the one time he saved me from, I had a streak when I was at Chitwa, which was an interesting one, because I started working at Chitwa and I was there for just over 2 years, and in that time I had many guests obviously that came through, and I was able to find a leopard for every single guest in the entire time that I was at Chitwa. And then I got these one night guests from Dubai who hated everything about safari. Why they came on a safari, I'm not quite sure. They just didn't like anything about it. They didn't like the heat, they didn't like the rain, they didn't like the fact that there were bugs, they didn't like the fact that the animals were not fed at certain times, that they could just go when they wanted to, and all kinds of other things. But anyway, that aside, it was an afternoon they came in and they hated everything, and they decided that they weren't going to stay at the lodge for the few days that they had booked in for, that they were going to leave the next morning immediately. But they wanted to go on a game drive, and they wanted to see every single animal under the sun in that afternoon game drive. And so obviously it was a little bit of a kind of finicky subject, and we thought, well, we'll try our very best to find as much as we can. And as we were about to go on a game drive, the storm came out of nowhere, and it absolutely came down. It was really lashing down. It was horrible to be out. You couldn't even see 2 meters in front. And so I asked them, do they want to still go? And they said to me that they did. And we left the lodge, and 5 minutes into the drive they were telling me that they didn't want to go anymore, and that they were not tired of being wet, and that the animals must just come to the lodge and all of that. So anyway, we kind of went out. We managed to find 2 of the Majingalan male lions that were lounging about, and they were desperate to see a leopard, and unfortunately there was no leopards about. There hadn't been for about sort of 24 hours. We hadn't seen any sign of a leopard, nothing. And I thought, well, these will be the first guests that I'll have that leave Chitwa without seeing a spotted cat. And we were just about to arrive back at the lodge, and lo and behold, there came Mvula, just walking out from the lodge itself, and positioned himself perfectly on a termite mound within the parking lot of the lodge. And we were able to sit there and kind of just watch this cat sprawled out from the comfort of the lodge itself, which was pretty cool. So he's got lots of very cool memories about this cat and what he's been up to. And like I say, I've had some of the most insane hunts with him as well. In fact, the best leopard kill I've seen has been with this particular individual, when he chased an impala, much like the 5 cheetah of the Masai Mara. He just kind of went flying out over an open area at Chitwa airstrip and ran there and caused absolute panic. And I don't think the impalas have ever been hunted by a leopard in that way, and they all just sort of panicked, and one ran straight into him, and he just grabbed it and managed to kill it. And then hyenas arrived, and he was trying to drag it up a tree, and as he jumped into the tree, he got kind of halfway up, and the hyena got the leg of the kill and was pulling it down, and the impala was still alive, and the hyena on one end and leopard on the other. It was just all very chaotic. And then I had a flat tire in amongst all of that as well. So it was a pretty cool sighting, and it was amazing just to watch him hunt in a completely different way to what we see from other leopards here in the Sabi Sands. So he's a very special leopard, and like I said, that's why I was very surprised this afternoon to hear that he's around, and very happy. And as much as I want to see all the other leopards that we get out here, he's he's got not as much time left, and we don't get to see him regularly, so it's a very special thing to kind of see him again and reminisce about all of these amazing things that I've seen from this particular cat and the beauty that he has provided for so many people. And VM and I were actually talking about it just now. I wonder how many times he's been photographed and how many photographs there are of Mvula floating around in the world, and how much happiness and sort of pleasure he's provided to so many people out there. Scarlett, you're wondering how close do leopards get to our camp? Well, in our camp, I haven't seen any leopards walk through the DRC yet, but in other camps that I've worked, so if we take Simbambili is one of the camps I worked at, Salahesh, she denned right in the camp underneath one of the decks of the spa, and so she used to see her walking, ambling around all over the place. And in fact, one morning we came down for coffee and we came down onto the front area of the lodge, and there she and Tiani were just lying, having a little look on the deck itself, and the guests were all taking photos of her. It was a bit of a surreal scene watching these two leopards. It almost looked like two house cats lying there. I've had Mvula at Chitwa many times walking through that camp, walking into the office. I've seen him walking over the deck area. He once had, I was telling VM earlier, he had a kudu kill on one of the decks of the rooms there. And he made an absolute mess, and not because of the fact that he was trying to, but he had this kill, and he then dragged it up onto the deck of the suite, and he then pulled it over the chairs and left blood and guts all over the chairs itself. He then decided that he needed to scent mark on every sort of bit of furniture that was out on that deck, and peed all over the cushions and everything else, and then took the carcass into a tree that was overhanging the swimming pool. So bits of bone and things that fell into the pool. It was a bit of a nightmare to actually clean it up, and it was funny because there was guests in that room that were there for 3 nights, the entire 3 nights that he was there, and that they couldn't use their deck, and they actually went to their travel agent and complained that there was a leopard outside and that they weren't able to swim or sit outside the whole time that they were there. You would think that they would have been quite happy to have had a leopard sitting outside their room every single day. They just woke up and there was Mvula lounging by the pool and having a little look at them, and they got some crazy footage of him just kind of sitting on the other side of glass, just looking at them and having a little drink from the pool. It was really a very, very cool sighting. So he's been around a lot. I've had Tandi all over Chitwa camp before. I've spoken about it before when she came into my room once, or twice actually. The first time was a lot deeper into my room than the second time. The second time she just came to the doorway and went. But so leopards are very frequently around the camp. Here at Djuma, Karula used to be always in and out of Weatela and Gallagher, and she used to be under the decks. In fact, she used to keep her cubs there fairly regularly. I know Induna and Mishu and Shivinzi and Shavambalana, both of them spent a lot of time around the camp itself. So, the leopards become quite at home with camps. So as soon as they're habituated and they realize that, people aren't too much of a threat, then you find that they actually aren't too sort of stressed about walking through camps at night and even during the day sometimes. So it is something that you have to be aware of and have to be a bit careful of at times. And particularly when you get leopards like this, older leopards will sometimes come into camps because there's the ability to go and try and get into bins and those kind of things. So Nadine, you're wondering if the leopard that appears on, I imagine you're watching on YouTube or Periscope with the Safari Live logo that's yawning, is that Mvula? No, it's not. It's one of his proposed offspring. So it is Quarantine that is busy yawning there, and so Quarantine, we think, is one of his offspring. It looks very much like Mvula, in fact, and so I would be surprised if it wasn't. But he now is dominant a little bit further to the east, and I'm sure we are going to get more and more views of Quarantine. I think that when there's this little changeover in the next baton is passed in terms of our male leopards, I think Quarantine is going to start pushing back towards his natal area, and we're going to see Hosanna going in the same kind of route towards where Quarantine went, and that sort of circular motion hopefully will play out. But we'll see. I mean, it's obviously dependent. Quarantine might like where he is now and not want to come here and leave a gap then for Hosanna or this new young male that's in the western sector, one of them to be around. But it's like I say, not him. Unfortunately, it would be nice if it was the old legend, and I would think it would be great to actually have all of the male leopards that we've seen on Safari Live since the beginning and see kind of portraits of all of them. But unfortunately, the way technology was and things, I don't think we have many good quality portrait photos of Mafufanyan and Jordan, well, the original Jordan, and then Yambilu Jordan. So there's a couple of ones that are missing, and then there was an old male. I'm not sure if any of you remember this. Maybe some of you that have been watching for a long time remember a really old male leopard that came through through a few times. I think he was seen twice on Djuma, and then he's seen a few times in the west, but he was very old, and he actually eventually ended up going all the way down to Lion Sands, and he disappeared down there. And he was quite famous because he climbed a tree in Londolozi, and he went up right to about 30 meters up and went and raided a fish eagle nest. So there's a video of him doing that. But those are the only sort of old male leopards that we've had, or older, more dominant male leopards that we've had on Djuma. But it would be really cool just to kind of put them all together and see what they all look like over the years. It would be, I think, a very nice little thing to see. Anyway, let's carry on sitting with Mvula. Be patient. We never know how many times we're going to get to see him more in his life, and so it's better just to sit here and enjoy as much as we can. Plus, there's not really much else going on, so there's nothing better than sitting with a leopard. Hopefully, he'll get up and moving. But while we do that, let's go across to Steve, who I believe is doing his best impression of Mvula and is just chilling.
Welcome back, folks. We are here in the drainage line. Nice and cool in the drainage line. We've got some tall trees around us. I believe Mvula is enjoying the coolness of wherever he is and just chilling out, laying flat. Tristan's keeping tabs on him. But decided to get off a little bit, stretch the legs, breathe a little bit in this drainage line. Nice, deep, sandy soils. And why did we stop? We have a beautiful tree above us here. But it's not the tree, not the reason we stopped. I will talk about it afterwards, but the reason we stopped is I noticed something that is evidence of human habitation in these areas. And if you have a look closely over here, you can actually see what I'm talking about. There's a beautiful hole made over here, but clearly made with an axe or panga or some form of chopping device. And this is something that is historical of local people in the area that would produce holes like this in trees, and then doing it to stimulate bees to possibly come and make a natural bee hive inside here. We're quite close to the road. We're about 10 meters from the road, for this is something that people would do. It's not very old, but can also be quite old. It all depends really on where you are. But there's evidence of this throughout the Kruger National Park, throughout the Lowveld. The man has chopped this open. I say man, it could have been a woman. Chops it open it up. It's a beautiful cavity. There's evidence that possibly a squirrel or something else has been in there. You don't want to be sticking your hands in there or anything like that. But beautiful Tambuti tree. I'm going to get you a little branch just to show you why these trees are very cool, and I must be very careful, folks, because these trees are not the nicest of trees to tangle with. Tambuti, also known as African sandalwood. I'm going to come back here and show you. I don't know if is that all right for you. Sands right there. You can see the shape of the leaves. These are quite new leaves, so they're not demonstrating the classic sharp edges that you get, but the top is slightly green and the bottom is a little bit paler. But what's characteristic of this, and if you can zoom right in on there, can you see that milky latex that is coming off there? There's even coming off of the stem here. Can you see that? Okay, now that milky latex is extremely poisonous. You do not want to get that in your eye. You do not want to get that on your skin. So I'm quickly going to throw that away before I damage myself. But Tambuti, if you took a drop of that and you had a painful tooth, very, very painful, you took a drop of that, put on the tooth, it would deaden the nerve. I'm not saying you don't have to go see a dentist, but it'll alleviate the pain for quite a period of time. It is a fantastic wood. I broke off just a little piece over here, and you can smell it. It's got a beautiful, sweet, sweet smell. It's got a nice sort of brownish red color inside. The older wood on the outside is quite grey because it's been out to the elements, but the wood inside, it's beautiful, beautiful. Woodworkers throughout the ages have enjoyed these trees, but if you work with it and you sand it and you get this sawdust in your eyes, you will go blind. You will go blind, so there's a wood you have to be very, very careful with. But for the making of rifle stocks, it's something that historically has been very, very well recorded. People who make rifle stocks out of this, if you polish it up, even a table, any woodwork that you do with this, after 100 years, it still maintains that beautiful, sweet, sweet smell. But if we were out here and we were camping and we were trying to survive on the elements, this is a tree you have to pay very careful attention to, because what do we need when we're camping? We need warmth, we need cooking, so we'll make a fire. So we'll run around, we'll grab wood. We're in the drainage line, so there's lots of wood here. You have to identify this wood. If you put this on the fire and you burn it, it gives off a very sort of creamy, sweet smoke. You can smell it quite quickly, but for the uninitiated, and you cook on that, you will get very sick. You will actually poo yourself and dehydrate yourself, and you could potentially die. Sounds like a wonderful story. Pay attention to the Tambuti to get a drip, or it just wouldn't work. So be very careful. I'm going to keep that. That's a wonderful piece. So, folks, we're carrying on quiet out here this afternoon. There's not much going on Chitwa. Lots of antelope around, but there haven't been too much recorded incidents on the radio. So we're just going to carry on and see what we can unfold as the road ventures down. As we venture down the road, it is starting to get a little bit later in the afternoon. Definitely my favorite time of the day, when we start seeing animals moving. And this is the time of day when animals like possibly Mvula might get up. So let's go have a look. Trist, see what he's doing. Is he up? Is he up? Let's have a look.
Well, I don't think so just yet. I mean, we repositioned ourselves completely. We've come around to the other side of where we were parked to just try and get a better view of his face, and hopefully if he puts his head up, at least be able to see him. But you can see he's still very sleepy. I don't know if he's going to wake up anytime soon. I think maybe he's been moving quite a bit during the day, given that he was found walking on the road, and then we followed him all the way to this section. And also, you never know, maybe there's something that's underground here that he's just waiting for it to come out. So it could be that's why he's just having a rest. I don't know if he's going to be too active, but we'll see. There's another vehicle that's on its way to join us, and so maybe when they arrive, that might stimulate him just to poke his head up and have a little look around, and so we can see him. But you can see there that he definitely is in need of a meal, and you can see that there's that sort of atrophy around the hip area. It's a common thing to see on older leopards. I remember Safari and Mafufunyan, they both ended up looking a little bit like that, and it is sad to see it, but you'll be surprised. I mean they put it on quite quickly again, so once they have that sort of loss, if they just can get food, then you'll find they'll actually start to kind of put that muscle back on, and they tend to be okay. But eventually it's going to get to the point where he's just too old to actually do it. Now, Ellie, you want to know if he could eat some grubs or things like that. Well, he certainly could probably go after things like termites. While there's a lot of these winged termites around, they land on the ground, and he could lap those up, and it wouldn't actually be too much effort for him to do so. You'd be able to get some sort of nutrients out of that without expending a lot of energy. And I have seen leopards do it before out of just sort of, I think, more out of opportunity than anything else. But so you could go after that. In terms of grubs, no, I mean, they're not designed to try and dig up grubs and break open bark and those kind of things. They don't have the claw structure of something like a honey badger that is able to do those kind of things, and so I think it'll be a little tough for him to be able to get to that. What you can try and go after is also things like terrapins, tortoises, catfish, monitor lizards, birds, and then the odd, big antelope in between that he might be able to luckily enough get to. That would probably be his best bet. And then, like I say, also just scavenging off any possible potential kills that might be around. So anything like a buffalo kill that's maybe left and there's still a bit of nutrients, so almost fulfill the same role as what a group of hyenas would fill, and just try and kind of get into that. The problem with that is that often there's either lions around or there's going to be hyenas, and in his state that he is in now, he's not going to really be too much of competition for hyenas. They will be able to chase him off quite quickly. So I think his best bet is just to try and find smaller food items, try and get things like scrub hares and various other small animals like that, and just try and kind of keep getting nutrients, and then also just try and bump into the odd leopard for a scavenged meal from time to time. Scarlett, you're wondering if leopards his age usually pass away from illness or predation? I think it's probably about a 50-50 split, Scarlett. So you'd probably find a number of them do get killed by predators, so in the form of lions or hyenas or other male leopards. But a lot of them would also suffer from, the breakdown of the organs. So you might find some of them have TB, where they'll get lesions in their lungs. Some of them might get infections from hunting. Things like porcupines, quills go into their coats and they get that. So there's a number of different things that can happen to them. So it's probably a 50-50 split between a sort of a body breakdown and a predation event. So it depends on that. There's also, of course, there could be a situation where they fight, and with another leopard and they get injured, and then it's just basically a starvation that takes place rather than anything else. So we'll see. I mean, there's been leopards this year, or last year should I say, that have passed away and left us, that were in far better condition that Mvula was in, and had also other issues and had enlarged livers and those kind of things. So those things also do happen from time to time, but hopefully he'll fight back from this. Hopefully he'll get stronger and he'll get food in his belly and he'll start to look a little bit better in the coming weeks. So I hold out hope for him. He's such a clever leopard and he's survived so much so far that I think he knows there's a couple of tricks and up his sleeve that he can hopefully get himself back into a bit better condition than he is now. I wonder if it's maybe because he just went on such a long jaunt all over the place, and what triggered that I'm not quite sure, but he ended up going all the way down to Mala Mala and back, and I wonder if that sort of movement just took it out of him a bit. Maybe had he prior to that sort of stayed in this area, maybe he would have been in better condition. I'm not sure. It could also be the fact that there's just too many male leopards here at the moment, that he's just got so much competition that he just can't keep up with all of these other males, and he's really struggling to try and find a place to actually keep his food because he gets sort of pushed out quite quickly. Now, Philip, you're wondering if Tingana is not much younger than Mvula. I think this is the question. I've forgotten now because I was thinking of something else, but would he be able to age as quickly as Mvula has? So yes, very likely. I mean, if Tingana starts to get pushed out, starts to become nomadic, and he starts to kind of unfortunately be pushed out of his area that he knows, he could very well end up looking exactly like Mvula or behaving like Mvula. And the thing about Mvula is it's very different to any of the other male leopards that I've known that have been ousted. Most of the other male leopards that I've seen that have been ousted have moved out of the area completely. They've ended up going into other places. So if you think of the Kashan male, was ousted from Londolozi, Singita and the west, and then ended up going all the way down to Sabi Sabi. The Sand River male, same thing, from Londolozi down to Sabi Sabi and Lion Sands area. So there's a number of those different males that have all been ousted, that have been pushed off and kind of left, and because they've then left, they've run themselves in, or they've run into other things and other problems, and they've kind of gotten sort of killed quite quickly, although I suppose Sand River male lasted for quite some time. But with Tingana, who knows? It's possible. I mean, Tingana could go from looking excellent to bad in a short space of time. He's not that much younger, as far as we know, than Mvula is, and so a year is a long time, and who knows what's going to be going on in a year's time with Mvula, with Tingana. We don't know. We saw the other day he had a very bad limp, but he still managed to come out of it, and he looks as strong as ever now. So Mvula's looked like this before, and he's managed to bounce back from it, and he's managed to try and get a situation where he's looking healthier and fitter. So you never know with them, but yes, it's very possible. You decided that you're a little bit tired of lying that way, so he's now turned the opposite way and back to the way that we were just now. So hopefully the sun being out is what's causing him to get a little bit uncomfortable, and that he'll start to get up and move. And while we sit and wait, Steve is apparently continuing his feathered theme for the day, but he's got something that I think Mvula would love to be eating right now.
Mvula is enjoying himself, and so are these waterbuck. We have a group of young waterbuck. Some are medium-sized to probably adult already, and there's a couple of youngsters amongst them, but they're having fun. There's no aggression at the moment. There's just a little bit of jostling and horn movement, and that male we saw earlier, he would have already been in his prime. He would have been through all these antics before, long before, and these guys, to get to that stage, need to work on their skills. And we have in Parla playing at the back, and these two very crazy Nyala ewes that have run from left to right of the screen repeatedly for the last 5 minutes. We're not quite sure what they're doing. Looks like a little bit of chase the tail, but it is quite a funny scene. Little guinea fowls were here a moment ago. But the waterbuck are all jostling with each other, a little bachelor group, no females to be seen, and we're surrounded by this heavy scent of waterbuck. It is just quite a scent to behold, folks. It is very musty. It almost leaves a bad, bitter taste in your mouth when you smell it. It's not very pleasant. It's not the most endearing smell in the bush, but it is one of those smells that you do pick up and you do understand quite clearly. And there goes the... Did you get that? That Nyala, I don't know what they are doing. They are... I think the tail just was visual in the screen there. But normally when an antelope runs, the rest of them around generally run. But there seems to be no incident of that. There's just waterbuck doing their thing, impala doing their thing. and clearly Nyala doing their thing. And when you find animals playing like this, horning or feeding or doing any sort of normal behavior, then you can be pretty sure that they are relaxed. They're not interested in it. Well, there's no danger nearby. Animals don't basically carry out their normal behaviors when something else is disturbing them. And you can just hear the sounds of a spotted flycatcher in the background, that very high churring sound, if you can hear it. Very nice. So the waterbuck on the right is a bit bigger than the one on the left, but very important for them to understand how the locking of the horns works, because those are very, very potent weapons when used correctly. And the others, the younger ones, seem to be interested and watching. But good technique, pushing with the shoulders and back with the back legs. You clearly see that white rump on the waterbucks. As the smell lingers, we are surrounded by them. Must be about 12 or so males in the group. Some are still coming out of the bush, and so the smell is really lingering in the air. The air movement down in this little drainage line is very low, so there's not much movement, so it just sort of hangs there. And as the name waterbuck implies, yes, we are very close to the water. We're probably only about 100 meters from Chitwa Dam, my apologies. And once again, a nice aggregation. Impala, waterbuck, we had those Nyala. I don't know where they've gotten to now, but they're a little bit to the right and forward. You'll see those two younger ones are now starting to jostle a little bit right. Senzo, question from Joy: do waterbuck pronk? No, waterbuck, they do not pronk. They run. They are quite fleet-footed when they move. And they have been known to, as a predator defense, to run straight into water, as the name implies, waterbuck. And that smell that we smell on them is actually due to a gland on the skin. I've always found it's much more potent in males than in females. But the wind has just picked up again, and we've got that in the nose. It is a really charming smell, folks. No, it's not actually, but it is part of the wonders of the bush. But waterbuck have got a gland on the skin, which actually enables them to keep their fur dry. It's almost like the duck we saw earlier, like a preen oil, but it gives off this smell. I know the females have got it, but I've never smelt a female as potently as, especially a big dominant male. But that gland gives off that oil, which keeps the fur dry. You can see how thick the fur is on the waterbuck. An animal like that, you'd think it would hit the water and would just sink, like it would soak it all in like a sponge and just sink deep down, but actually not. They run into the water and are quite fleet-footed, like animals further north, like the lechwe, and I think the puku, if I'm not mistaken. That is their sort of defense. I've never seen a waterbuck take to the water, in all fairness, but further north in places like the Okavango and in those swamp-like areas, these animals are very fleet-footed in the water. So no, to answer your question, they don't pronk, but they do headbutt, as they are doing there. And wonderful, look at the faces on them there. Really a beautiful antelope, really, really pretty. See, he's picking up the scent as well. That wind is just coming sort of from the right of the screen towards him. So picking up whatever scent there might be lingering in the bushes here. Definitely seems to be no sign of danger. The animals are all quite relaxed. As the sun is slowly meandering down, the light is getting really, really nice for the camera. Nice for some shots. If you are a photographer out there, this is definitely one of the better times of day for those pictures. And so we're going to carry on towards Chitwa. We're just here. We're going to see maybe the hippos, see if anything else is moving down there. See what else we can come up with. It is a lovely afternoon. Senzo and I are enjoying ourselves thoroughly. We've investigated Chitwa quite nicely, and we're having some fun. So I believe Mvula is still sleeping, but let's send you to Trist, who can maybe talk to you about what leopards are doing. Maybe he can tell you what he's dreaming.
Well, we can try and chat to him. He seems as though he's a little unresponsive today, since we've been with him most of the afternoon and he hasn't replied yet. But I wonder what he's dreaming of. Maybe he's dreaming of a big impala carcass or something like that. Or maybe he's dreaming of the good old days when he used to roam around all over the place. It's amazing. For a leopard in this particular sort of area. He's seen probably most of the Sabi Sands, if you think about it. The only places he hasn't really been is to the far west, but he was born down in the south on Lion Sands, and he on the Sabi River. He then negotiated his way through Sabi, Mkombi, those areas, then through a bit through Londos and Mala, before then ending up here in the northern Sabi Sands, where he's roamed pretty much the whole of the north. He's been seen on Simbambili, Arathusa Private, Elephant Plains, Chitwa, all over really, Cheetah Plains and Coral, and then up into Torchwood, Buffelshoek, and then he even ranged as far up as Manyeleti. So he's really seen a lot of this section of the world and really has explored a lot of the Sabi Sands, probably more so than most of the male leopards that I know of, that's for sure. There are obviously some that have gone quite big distances. There was a young male by the name of Matimba that was, I'm trying to remember if it was Safari's last son. It was Safari's last son, and he ended up going over 50 kilometers as the crow flies north of us into the Timbavati and became the dominant male there in the Timbavati. So there are a few other males that have travelled like he has, but in terms of Sabi Sand kind of males, he's definitely done probably one of the biggest sections of the Sabi Sands. Mario wants to know which of the current leopards were fathered by Mvula. Now, Mario, difficult to say because we don't know 100% all of them, but what we think is that Quarantine and Kunyuma are both from Mvula offspring. Then Shavambalan and Shavinzi was undecided. It could have been either him or Jordan. Then Tumba is also a sneaky one, which would be interesting. I just want to know for my own sake. Torchwood is also from Inkanyeni, is Mvula's offspring. I'm trying to think now when we go back in time. Unfortunately, Wabayiza was killed, so that was Tandi's firstborn. Tandi's secondborn, Bahuti, which could have also been from him or Tingana. We don't know what happened to him, and all likelihoods, I think he might have disappeared as well. Induna and Mishu was more likely Jordan, or Mafufunyan was before the time of Mvula. So I'm just trying to think who else there could have been. Shadow, unfortunately, all the cubs that he produced with Shadow didn't make it. I suppose you could say maybe, just maybe, that Sindile might have been part of his offspring, but probably not. And then I don't know of any leopards up in the north that are his, so there might be one or two up that way, but that's as far as I know within this section that are alive today. I don't know of any other sort of offspring that he managed to raise and that managed to get into adulthood. Kuchava is also another grey area one that could have been either him or Shavambalan, one of the two of them, or Tingana. Actually all three could have been possible there, and we don't know where Tandi ends up going sometimes to produce them. So he's got quite a few, and there are a number that are around, and unfortunately not as many as you would hope for from a male like this. Unfortunately for him, when he first got into this area, while he did mate a lot, he mated with Intima a lot, Kwatile, but both of them unfortunately just really didn't produce many offspring and lost a lot of their offspring that he produced with them. And then he took a while to actually kind of become dominant. He had to compete with Mafufunyan for a long time and Yombilo Jordan, and when he first got here, a lot of the females had already got cubs, and it took a long time until he actually started fathering offspring quite a bit. So at least he looks, in terms of the Karula lineage, he could potentially be sort of 2 generations there, and then he might have done almost 4 generations with Tandi. So when you think about that, that's a good innings for him, and he's done really well. It's just that he didn't have access to that many females in his particular territory, which sounds quite strange, but he really only had Tandi, Inkanyeni and Karula mostly, a little bit in his Shadow, because once Intima disappeared, then Kwatile spent most of her time more to the west in Arathusa, which was Tingana's territory by then, and there was Ostrich Koppies then also passed away on Mala, and so it left a bit of a void for him, so he didn't have that much access to females, whereas Tingana's had a very much better streak of things. He's had Karula and Tandi and Shadow, and he had Nsele, he had Alahesh, so he's had Moya, Kwatile, so he had a lot more leopards to mate with over his time, and I would suggest that he's probably got more offspring than Mvula does, even though Mvula's been around a little bit longer. Also, he was ousted fairly early in his kind of life, and Mvula was ousted at around 11, was when he kind of started to disappear, maybe a little bit before that, whereas Tingana, we know, is probably over 11 already, and he's still mating and is still around and has produced a cub with Tundi and is mated with Kuchava and potentially could have produced cubs with her, or could also be Quarantine. He's the dad there as well, you never know. So he's done, I mean, Tingana's done pretty well as well, and we've been lucky that in this northern sector the male leopards have been fairly sort of good to us, and it's not been like the lions where there's been these massive changeovers very, very quickly. Most of the male leopards have spent quite a bit of time in these areas. I mean, Mafufunyan and Yambila Jordan were legends that spent long periods here, and then Mvula, Tingana on Djuma, and now hopefully the next generation will hopefully be something like Kosana and Quarantine. It would be nice if the two of them were around to stick through. Right, so Mvula still sleeping, still taking it very easy. Hopefully he's going to wake up. We're going to spend the rest of our afternoon with him anyway. The sun's starting to get to a beautiful time now, and the light is amazing, so it's the perfect time for Mvula to put on a really good show. But while we wait for that, let's go back across to Steve, who I believe has found something that is not feathered, surprise, surprise, but is rather large and rotund.
Rather large indeed. From one of the big five to another, we have here a male elephant. Elephant bull. He is just walking away from Chitwa Dam, and surprising because he didn't have anything to drink. He just walked past a little muddy pool a moment ago, and just that's why his left shoulder is wet. He just picked up a trunk full of water and splashed it on himself. But he's keeping his distance from us. But if you can zoom in on that eye, Sans, you can see the eye, folks. I know he's just going behind this bush quickly. Let's just give him a moment. The elephant's eye is a very important element to look at. Oh, he is deciding to stay. Let's move a little. Oh, sorry, boy. Sorry, boy. He is definitely... Oh, look what he is doing right now. He is grabbing some dust from the ground. Now, elephants do this for two reasons. One is geophagy, where they eat it, and he looks like he's eating the soil. And another reason is to coat his body with it. What has he got there? Doesn't seem to be chewing it, though. Smelling. He is smelling the ground. I thought he was picking something up. The nostrils of an elephant, the sense of smell, is something to behold. I don't think we will ever fully understand what goes through the brain of an elephant when it is smelling the ground. Did you see that foot, folks? When an elephant does that, you should always stop doing whatever you're doing. It is a sign of indecision. When an elephant lifts its leg, it is unsure, almost like a child who is trying to explain himself but is unsure of the words. He kind of like moves his foot in the sand. That is what this bull was doing. But he's quite relaxed, though. But I don't think he's 100% on the easy side. But he is relaxed. He's keeping a distance from us. He's walking towards the road, and he's going to probably cross towards the west. So that might be the last visual we get of him. But we'll just keep up a little bit. When I was saying before, he walked past that little pool, and he just splashed himself. But the pool is quite stagnant, and elephants can smell that. They can taste it. They know from a kilometer away that it doesn't smell or taste very good. But there he is. He knows there's a boundary here. There's that foot again. This is when you give them their space, folks. Don't go forward. Don't start your engine. His eyes are quite relaxed. You can see his eyes are very, very soft. Very soft. If an elephant gives you big, round eyes with wide open, then you know that something is not right. That is generally the first sign of distress. But he's unsure. He wants to cross the road. He knows it's a road. Elephants are smart like that. We spoke earlier about elephants, how they can be smart. He knows that there's a road. He knows we want to go along the road. So he's just taking a little bit easy crossing. Look at that. It's almost an uncertainty. There's a barrier. He can smell the barrier. Maybe the tires, maybe the fuel. He's quite a young elephant. He's probably in his late 20s, probably 28 to 30. You can sort of tell that by the shape of the forehead, the design of the eyes and the tusks. It's not a very big bull. He's on his own. Shame. He's coming back again. He just actually wants to be friends, I think. He's smelling all sorts of things. There are a few tracks of elephants I see up ahead. There's some dung in the road there. He's going to come and say hello. I hope this could be nice. He's smelling. There's definitely all sorts of senses. If you can imagine following a friend or family member 3-4 days after they pass, just by smelling where they put their feet. I tell you, that would be quite a feat. Elephants are able to do things like that. Obviously, there's a lot more smell to the elephant dung and to the urine that they might deposit. Just going to stay right here, folks, because he's just behind the bush. Just behind the bush. You don't want to stress him off. His tail is very loose. It's not wagging like it would if he was completely relaxed. But, you know, he knows we're here. He's very aware that we're here. He's keeping his distance. There's lots of communication that he's going through with regards to maybe trying to find the females, maybe trying to find a friend or two. We are here. We're trying to be friendly. Where's he gone? He's moving back again. He's coming back to the road. He's trying to figure out where these females probably went. He's not a really big bull, so I wouldn't say he's in a mating prime. He's definitely not in must. There he is back in the road again. There's some elephant dung. Can you see? He's having a little smell. He would be able to identify exactly who that dung came from. I don't know how we all know that, but people are postulating these sort of things. The big pachyderm with his incredible sense of smell. We know that they recognize family members. We know that they recognize bones of family members generations later, or should I say at least many, many years later. They go back to the same site to investigate fallen comrades, fallen family members, fallen grandmother, for example. He's moving back across towards where we can go. So we just move up a bit, see if we can get another visual. African bush. Absolutely. And once again, he lifted that leg. He's not 100% relaxed with what's going on, but you know, he's a big boy. There he is. Jade wants to know if it's problematic that he is alone. It is not problematic. It is what bulls do. Basically, the bulls get a little bit tired of the antics that go on inside the breeding herds. The breeding herds are made up of females and their offspring. Bulls start showing sexual interest in females at about the age of 16, and they get politely pushed out. So in the first 5 or 6 years of a bull being on his own, it is very difficult. And I do think they get lonely. And I've had many, many encounters with bull elephants that do something similar to this guy, except they'll walk in the road and will never let you pass. They'll start feeding. I think they do get lonely, and they do miss the encounters and the love of other elephants. But when you see a bull encounter other elephant bulls, it is quite something to be seen. I've seen 8 elephant bulls came from one side, 8 from the other side. They sort of stopped tentatively for about 50 meters away. They didn't get any visual recognition, but as soon as they picked up a scent of each other, they walked closer. You saw the excitement build, almost like when you see a loved one at the airport. You see them and you start to sort of jog, and then you run, and then you grab them and embrace. It was quite something. The elephants came up and they entangled trunks and they were touching each other. Quite something, because I don't know what's going on, but the elephants are able to basically, through that breath, they pick up on all the communication, all the signals, or everywhere this animal's been. It's almost like a very long written letter that's telling them everything that they did in the last couple of weeks, months, or a year since they last saw each other. So let's see if we can just move around a little bit, see if we can relocate him again. But from one big 5 to the other, we're going to send you back to Tristan, who has still got a very flat cat.
Indeed I do. He's still very sleepy, and I don't know how he's sleeping the way he is. His head is kind of like bent over down a sort of slope, and he's kind of rounded off on top of a little bump there, which can't be super comfy. But the light is at the most perfect point right now, so if he's going to get up and give us a show, it would be amazing if he did it at this moment, because it's kind of being filtered a little bit by the clouds, and there's this beautiful gold hue that is just kind of coming through, and particularly with the greenery that we've gotten over the last little bit because of the rain, it's kind of reflecting that light all over the place, and it is absolutely beautiful out here. So I'm hoping that he decides to get up and move. It'll just be so nice to watch him kind of go through some golden lit grass and kind of see him going along his way, and maybe down even onto a road, so we can see him kind of striding down one of the roads of Djuma again. But at this stage he's still very, very sleepy. He's still not really moving too much. There's also a breeze that's picked up now, which means that you'll probably find the insects are not going to bother him too much. He's also not going to be worried about heat now. It's cooling down very quickly. In fact, the breeze is quite cold, so I don't think we're going to see a situation where he's going to start moving really anytime soon. There's no reason for it. anyway. But look at those ears. You can see how many nicks and cuts they are. He always has had quite tatty ears, so even from the beginning, when I first started to see him as a 5-6 year old male, he was already had a few cuts and scrapes, but they've definitely gotten a lot more tatty. You can actually see 1 or 2 of those biting flies that are busy crawling around on the back side of that ear and just kind of feeding off little bits there and making themselves a bit of a nuisance, and he'll flick them off every now and then when they get too irritating. You also notice then on the back of the ear, it's not as irritating. It's when they go down into the ear itself, I think that's when he really gets kind of quite frustrated by it, and that's when the ear flicks itself. But imagine all the stories those ears could tell, and all the sort of insect life that has been on those ears. Imagine how many different sets of legs of flies and ticks have been on that ear and have made a landing, much like the moon landings that people talk about. I wonder how many have been on there. It would be interesting to know how many sets of feet have stepped on the ear of Mvula. Now there's a car that's about to start, so hopefully that's going to mean Mvula is going to pop his head up and hopefully give us something to look at, but I don't know if he will. The vehicle that's here is a very quiet vehicle. Now that might sound very odd, but we get different types of vehicles out here, and there's one that is a petrol vehicle much like ours, and so they are much more quiet, and maybe that will mean that Mvula will stay sleeping. Although I see now they've decided they're not going to start their vehicle, so maybe we won't see him wake up. That's all. Shame, boy. He's definitely slowed his breathing rate down a little bit as well, so he's not as hot as much. So, Turtle Trekken and your niece Lily, you wanting to know what is the average age of a male leopard? Well, generally, I mean, it's very seldom that it's male leopards live past 14 years old, so most of them are around 12. That's the average age, generally in the Sabi sands, 12, 13, so he's about that. And the reason why is because of this is what we've discussed pretty much the whole afternoon, is that they get thrown out of a territory, they come across a number of other males, a number of hyenas and lions as they try and be nomadic, and it makes life a little bit difficult. It's also, they don't have then favorite hunting grounds or, areas where there's water, and so they have to move a lot more to find food and water because the ideal territories are all occupied by younger individuals, and that means that they put a lot more strain on their body. Plus, as they get older, things just don't work as well as they used to, and they're not able to be as fast and those kind of things, and so when they reach about 12 years old, generally they've been ousted by younger sort of 5-6 year old males, and either they've caught an injury from it or they now have to go and search for a lot more stuff, and that's why they end up in this condition and why their lifespan is a lot shorter than the females. The females tend not to have as much competition in terms of fighting for territories, and they don't tend to come to blows nearly as easily. It's been kind of thrown that book right out the window. A lot of our females last year that disappeared, none of them were at the average age that they should be. It's normally females around 14 to 15 years old is when they start disappearing, but last year most of them were disappearing at around sort of 12, so it was a little bit of a shock to see some of our really kind of well-known females to go last year, particularly Salesh and Karula. Both of them kind of disappeared at an age where we thought we still had a few more years with them. So it's about 12 years old is kind of, I suppose, the general now for the Sabi sands, both male and female, over the last year, and hopefully he'll be an enigma and will come back from it and last and go well into 14, 15 like the Campan male, and there's been others before him that have also done that, so hopefully he'll be one of those that gets into those ages. But it's hard to see him lasting another 3-4 years when he's in condition like this. I don't know if this will be his last year. Who knows? Maybe I'm going to be proven wrong. Like I said, I've seen him in condition like this before and he's bounced back from it. Christine, you're wondering if he's sleeping longer than usual because he's a bit older? Debatable. Maybe. I mean, maybe he's tired, his joints and things are a little bit sore and he just can't really kind of get around as much. It's possible. But I've seen Tingana sleep like this. I've seen Anderson sleep like, well, maybe not Anderson. Anderson's a bit of an enigma when it comes to these things. He just goes all over the place and moves around. We know Hosanna the other afternoon when it was hot, he was also sleeping. So it depends a lot on weather conditions. It depends on what's going on around them. At this stage, he doesn't have any food source that he can go and chase right near him. It's also been quite warm this afternoon, and so he's just been resting. I'm sure tonight he will move around and he will go through a situation where he's able to sort of try and find some sort of a food item and move around a lot more. But maybe he's older, he will rest a little bit more. We saw with Tingana when he was a bit under the weather, and so when Tingana had that sore paw, he spent almost 5 days on Djuma. We found him every single day, and so they do rest up a little bit when they're a little bit under the weather, and you find that they then try and find somewhere just to take it easy. Right, Mvula looks as though he's gotten himself into a place where he's going to sleep even longer and take it very easy. So while we kind of sit here and hope that he'll give us one last show and pop his head up, let's go back across to Steve, who I believe is slowly starting to meander his way back to camp.
Meandering home indeed. The sun is setting in the horizon. We have had a wonderful afternoon, myself and Senzo, exploring Chitwa. I keep calling it Chitwa, but it's Chitwa. And the dam, we had a beautiful elephant bull just now, which has definitely made my day. But it's been an afternoon of aggregations and exploration, and we've had a fantastic time. We're going to be meandering our way home now. Wonderful afternoon. Thank you very much for joining me on our adventures. Senzo and I have had a lot of fun. And slowly back we go for an afternoon of wonder. Seeing the teas again. Remember, don't for fire unless you would like to lose a couple of kilograms. I would not suggest it. Good night to my side. Send you across to Tristan, who is going to give you his final story. Thank you very much. Have a brilliant evening. Oi!
Well, look at that. Mvula has obviously realized that it's that time where he now needs to poke up his head and have a little look around, and hopefully he'll give us one last kind of stare over his shoulder, and we can get those beautiful aqua-colored eyes reflecting in the golden light. There's a way of kind of just finishing up our day. There's another vehicle that's just joined, and so maybe that's why he popped up his head. I was hoping that he would, and maybe we'll see him decide to yawn and stand up. It would be nice if that was the case, but he's just kind of sitting at the stage, just watching the ongoings and listening to what's happening. But he's still got a serious set of shoulders and neck on him. As much as the rest of his body doesn't look good, his head and neck area is still massive, and he might not appear to be in his best condition, and he's past his heyday, but he is still a big animal, and he's certainly still got some sort of atmosphere about him that commands respect, and there's a wisdom and a sort of warrior look to him that is difficult not to appreciate. You can imagine all the things that it must take to be a dominant male leopard for as long as he was. I mean, he's been around, almost 13 years. To survive out here every single day is a struggle, and so for him to have managed that is always a special thing. And when you see him sitting like that, when he's up and regal, and like we had him when we first got him in the afternoon on that termite mound, he's just looks as warrior-like as you could ever imagine from a male leopard. So hopefully he's going to get up, and he looks as though he might. Are you going to turn to face us, boy, for one last time? Well done, good guy. But look at that, he's still a beautiful individual, and now that the light has become a little more even, you can see how incredible those eyes are. When he was younger, he had the most special eyes, very kind of bluish color, and there you can just see a little bit of that light color as he looks off into the distance, and his long eyelashes. It's not every day that you get to see the eyelashes on a male leopard. And look at the nose as well. The nose is working incredibly hard as he tries to pick up whatever is on the breeze. Right, unfortunately though, it's that time of the day where we are going to be heading home, and we're going to be starting to get back to camp. It's been an absolutely wonderful afternoon to spend it, and for us to have Mvula just to turn like that in the last little bit is almost just as good as we could ever ask for in this golden light. So thoroughly enjoyed my afternoon with Mvula, and I'm sure it's been a wonderful afternoon for all of you, with all of the things in the Mara, and Steve with all his birds, and Elephant, and Mvula, our old boy. So from all of us, it's been an absolute pleasure having you, and we hope to see you all tomorrow morning on our sunrise safari.